Hey guys, so this is part 2 to my miscarriage video. The last one that I left off on, I told my story of leading up to finding out that I was pregnant, to being pregnant, to actually getting the symptoms and being told like of a miscarriage, and then going through the trauma scare of an ectopic pregnancy, to then being told like I'm gonna miscarry and I just haven't yet. So I'm gonna do the part 2 of where I'm gonna go over when and how I actually miscarried, and then the shit show after it. When I had left off, I told you guys that I was in a very, very dark spot, mentally, emotionally, physically, with myself and with God after, learning that I was gonna miscarriage. Like the baby was not going to survive. I was just waiting to pass it, pretty much. So I was doing anything and everything that I could to feel like myself again. So I went to a dance class, which I love dance. I love Zumba. So I went to a really popular one in Springfield. It's called The Studio. And it was Valentine's Day, so they were doing like this Valentine's Day like sexy dance type thing. So go there, even though like I still feel like shit. I'm still struggling, still obviously like very bloated, have pregnancy symptoms, like the HCG is still in my body. So I'm not like feeling myself, but I'm still dancing. I'm trying to have a good time, and I ended up like enjoying myself. I love dance, and if you know anything about like womb healing or sacral chakra healing, and that was kind of the point of it too, I knew that this would help power up my sacral chakra, which I definitely needed. So we were dancing, and it was towards the end of class, thank God. I started getting really intense cramps. And so, but at this point, like I was still bleeding a lot. So like the bleeding from the miscarriage that it was coming just hadn't come yet. It was getting worse and worse like every day, but I started cramping bad. And so I'm like, okay, this feels like it's a little bit more intense than just like the cramping and bleeding. So I couldn't even finish the class. I go to the bathroom and there's just blood everywhere. Just blood. Like I was like, I don't even think I can go back in and finish, but I did, because I only had like 2 songs left. So I'm like, okay, maybe now that things have calmed down, like I'm not physically moving around anymore, maybe the cramping will go away. I was driving home and it just kept getting worse, and at this point I'm thinking, like, I'm starting to realize they're coming in patterns. So I'm like, oh my God, oh my gosh, I'm going into labor. Like, must be what's happening. It has to be, because I started to actually time the cramps, or what was now contractions. I could feel the rhythm of it. And the way that the cramps were, like, this was not a period cramp anymore. The cramps were not in my legs. They weren't like in my hips. It was like, if I could tell you, locate my uterus and womb, I could do it. Like, if from the cramping, the sharp pain, it's like somebody just stabbed you and just twisted this, I don't know what, right in the center of your body, the very freaking core of your pelvis. It was awful. So I'm trying to drive home while I'm having these contractions, and of course, don't get me wrong, guys, I know it wasn't full, like I was not like in full on labor of like what a full term pregnancy would be. They're highly doubtful, but this was still very, very uncomfortable and very hard to drive in. But I was just driving home, and as soon as I realized like what these things were, I just started bawling so hard, because I was pissed for all the emotions that came back from the miscarriage. I was pissed that this was happening, even though I knew it was coming. I was upset and sad. At the same time, I was relieved that my body was taking care of it on its own, that I did not have to go to the hospital and get, I forget what the surgery that you have to get if your body doesn't get rid of the baby. So it was all these floods, this flood of emotion of like relief, of being pissed and then being sad. And so I just screamed. I just freaking remember driving and screaming at the top of my lungs, and I just let myself feel. Like I literally, like that's all I do in these situations. And even if I felt like I was acting very childish, I just let all the emotion out, because otherwise it was going to stay stuck in my body. I needed to release it. And that's what I did the whole way home. And by the time I got home, I ran to the bathroom, and I was just, I felt the need to push. I'm like, I feel like I need to push. I need to somehow push this thing out. So when I would get the urge to push, I would. But then I got this like sense that my pushing wasn't really doing anything. It was just honestly helping me. Like when I would push with the contraction, it numbed the contraction a little bit. It made me feel like it was like numbing the pain. I don't know how else to describe it. But actually, like when I finally did pass it, like it just like I didn't even need to push. It just fell out. Like I could feel my body contracting and it pushing it out itself. So finally passed it, and of course had a moment. I was, it did what I needed to do to be able to let go and be emotionally okay, moving on from the situation. So I sat with myself and the baby for a little bit, and my husband was there too. He was such an amazing person. He was right there with me, and this greatly impacts the husband as well, guys. It impacted him, not physically like me, but emotionally. This can affect the husband, because it's their baby too. It's a loss. So, but after that, immediately after I had technically given birth, the contractions went away. They just stopped just like that. It was crazy how fast it had stopped. So I'm like, all right, it's over, it's done. Like obviously I was still bleeding quite a bit for days after, but it was just a relief for me that I felt like I could finally process it and move on from the situation. So I think it was like maybe a week later, I go to my follow-up appointment just to make sure that everything's out, everything looks good, make sure I'm okay, like mentally, emotionally. So I go in and they do another like ultrasound, with the vaginal ultrasound. And so I'm sitting there, I'm talking to, the ultrasound tech, and her mood shifts really quick. Like she starts getting awkward, and I'm like, this is awkward for me, like, okay. But I'm really in tune with the energy too. So as soon as I felt the room shift, I was like, something's not right. Something's not right. And she got really quiet. And so I was just like, okay. So the only thing that I could ever think of was she's found like not everything left the womb, right? Because that can happen too. Because I'm like, I know I passed it, but there must still be something, maybe stuck in there. So she's like, all right, let me go get the doctor and we'll come in and you can change and we'll come in and talk to you. So I'm like, okay. So I change and I sit, and she comes back and she's like, I can't find a doctor to talk to you right now, but I don't want you to leave the hospital until somebody talks to you. Okay, that was a big red flag. To me, if now that you've said something, I'm on high alert, that I'm like, okay, what did you see? And I know, and me, I went to school for a radiologist tech in the beginning of my career, of a college journey. So I know she can't tell me. And I was gonna try to get it from her anyway. I'm like, you've already told me something's wrong pretty much. You better freaking tell me. Like, you shouldn't have said anything if you weren't gonna tell me. But she tried to reassure me. She's like, everything's okay. Like, I even told her, I'm like, am I gonna like die or something? Like, because I got that worried because her emotions started to get worrisome. When a nurse or a tech gets nervous, how do you think that makes me feel? And you can't tell me? So I'm sitting there bawling. Like, I think that I'm about to walk out of the hospital and drop dead at any moment. Or I'm thinking, worst case scenario, she saw something on there. Like, maybe she saw cancer or something on there. And then they're going to tell me that I have, a tumor or something. And so I'm just like playing worst case scenarios in my head, and it just all feels very weird and like surreal. It's almost like I can't believe this is happening to me. Like, something is seriously wrong. And I was taken back by it because I thought I was in tune enough with my body would be able to, think that something was wrong, but or that feel that there was something still left in there, but maybe I'm not. And so I don't go back to work because it was during the day and I was supposed to go back to work, and nope, hot mess, did not. I bawled the whole way home, and she had me leave the hospital because they couldn't get somebody to see me until like 3 hours later, or not 3 hours, until 2 o'clock that day. And it was like it was 9 o'clock in the morning. So I'm waiting around until 2 o'clock hits to go back to the hospital so they can tell me what was wrong. That's not a good sign when they don't want to call you and they want you to come back. So I'm sitting there, like, finally I go back to the hospital, take my blood. I'm getting my blood taken, and I'm sitting there just in shock. Like, at this point, after everything that has happened, I'm sitting there and I just can't believe that this is life right now. I had a very surreal moment. I'm sitting there with my arm out and, getting my blood taken, and I start to actually slip into a meditative state. Like, the room kind of like shifts, and I'm just like, oh shit, here we go. Then I actually got I worked at this time, I worked a lot in the Akashic Records. And so one of the records keepers, came through and started talking to me, and I'm like, what is going on? And they're just like, we're just here to reassure you that everything's fine. Everything is going to be fine. And I'm like, it doesn't seem fine to me. Like, this seems like a horrible situation. And I'm like, tell me what is going on with my body. And they basically were like, we can't tell you. Like, there's nothing to tell you. And I'm like, I'm like, what's wrong? And they're like, nothing's wrong. And I'm like, obviously there is something wrong. So I'm sitting there having this like conversation in my meditative state while everybody else is in chaos around me in the hospital in this lab room. And so after I get done giving, my blood, and they take me back to the patient room, and they're like, the doctor will be with you when he can. And so I'm like, all right. Well, so we're sitting there, and about like 30 minutes passes, and the alarms go off in the building. And I'm like, okay, so they're fire alarms. And so I'm like, is this really happening right now? Like, is this just a freaking joke? Like, there's a fire, is this a drill? And then the nurse comes in and is like, hey, we need to evacuate the building. Okay. We're exiting, or we're going down the stairs, and I am still in such a disbelief. So I tap back in. I'm still very much connected, because I really feel like, and I don't know if it's just me, but when something happens to you that's very out of the normal, or that like shocks you in your system pretty much, it very much takes me out of reality almost, because I just can't believe that it's real. And it almost puts me in, connects me to the other realm very, very quickly. And so when this was going on, I, you know, was like, should be in a movie. Like, I can't believe we're exiting the building, the fire alarm's going off, I can't believe what is going on in this day, and I'm in this situation, still thinking at this point that something is seriously wrong with me. So I tap back in to, you know, ask like, what the hell is going on? Why is the fire alarm going off? And the response that I had gotten was, it's your sign. And I'm like, it's my sign. And then I started thinking, and I'm like, anytime that I see like a siren, like a fire truck or an ambulance or a police car, it always signalizes. It's a communication method for me. It's one of my symbols. And so anytime I see a fire truck or an alarm, it's to know that I'm safe and that everything is taken care of and I'm watched. And so the freaking fire alarm went off in the hospital. So I'm just like, I was like, did you guys really have to do that? Like, can we just not right now? But at the same time, I felt really relieved, because after I'd gotten those messages and after I had, you know, had those meditative states pretty much, I knew in my heart that somehow, some way, everything was going to work out. I did not know what it would be, but I was like, I know that I'm taken care of. We get halfway down the stairs and the alarm shuts off. And then the intercom, or as soon as it shuts off, we're like, okay, what do we do? And we get down into the stairs and into the lobby, and they're like, go back, it's, you know, false alarm. So I'm like, okay. So I go back up to the room for a false alarm. I sit for 2 hours waiting for the doctor to come in. And that's a long time to sit and ponder about your health, let me just tell you. But like I said, I knew that in my heart, like, everything was going to be okay. No matter what the answer was, I was going to be fine. I was going to do what I had to do, you know. So the doctor comes in and he's like, well, we didn't find anything. Yeah? Like, pretty much told you there was, you know, not a baby in there. I had already, you know, passed it. And I'm like, what did she see? You're like, what, you know, I'm still thinking, well, maybe that there's a tumor or something. And he's like, the tech misread it and made a mistake. They're like, you don't have anything. You don't have an ectopic pregnancy. She had thought she had saw an ectopic pregnancy, and there wasn't anything. The thing that we thought was, that I had thought was an ectopic pregnancy, and what she had probably saw was I had a cyst on my ovary or my tube, and that was from the ovulation. And I had told her that had happened, and because that's why I went to the emergency room to begin with. That was very frustrating, but at the same time I was very relieved that nothing was wrong, and all the signs and messages I had got were saying the same thing. I just did not know how it was going to play out. I was still shocked that somehow, some way, she saw something and mistaked it for something else, when it was clearly in the notes and I had told her that this thing was there. So that was a shit show. But pretty much after that incident at the hospital, nothing physically more really happened to me. My body did go back to normal. I started to feel more normal. Like, my hormone levels were returning to their natural selves. I started to recognize, like, myself in the inner, like, as my energy again. My body started to go back to normal, meaning the inflammation went down, the bleeding stopped. So it took a couple of weeks before I started to see change, and then it took about a month before I actually felt fully, I would say probably took me about a month to 2 months before I actually felt fully normal again. But I did a lot of healing outside of this as well after this whole situation had happened. Basically, I stopped taking Reiki clients or energy work clients for a while. I've solely focused on myself because of where I was at mentally, emotionally, and physically. Now, don't get me wrong, guys. I was in a very, very dark place when I found out I was having a miscarriage. But I had to pull myself from it, and I was getting better over time, and it just did not happen overnight. It did not happen overnight. But I knew that I had to move. I could not stay in that depression. Otherwise, it would eat me alive. It would ruin me. I want to say ruin me, but it would create a vicious, nasty cycle. And I would start to become a new person in that energy, and it would stay in my body if I did not deal with it, if I did not heal from it. And I don't care who you are, if you don't think that, if you've ever gone through a miscarriage or some kind of trauma, because yes, a miscarriage is a trauma. It is a trauma 100%, physically, mentally, emotionally. Your body goes through a trauma because it has to cleanse itself and get rid of the baby, unfortunately. Your hormones change. You're going through a trauma mentally and emotionally. You have changed. Your energy has changed. Everything has got to shift back. Otherwise, if you don't handle what has just happened, if you don't handle the emotions correctly, it can do a lot of damage. And I knew this. So I took the appropriate steps from what I had known from my previous, all of my years of energy work and meditation. I was determined to not let that happen. So I quit taking clients for a little bit. I focused on myself. I got out, and some of the things that I did to heal, I not just did energy work sessions on myself and meditate quite a bit to help my body and my mind, and my connection basically, and the relationship with myself heal. I reached out to friends that were in energy work, and one of them, thank goodness, I'm so thankful for her, the manager of Mystics. She helped me tremendously. She gave me readings, psychic session readings that really helped. She balanced my chakra system for me. That really helped. It helped bring me back to my center. I got out in nature a lot. I tried to let the earth help heal me. I did everything that I knew possible to help bring my body back into balance, my mind back into balance, and my relationship with God to be healed. And I say God, but it is essentially all the same thing. My relationship with myself, with creation, with my body, with life, with all of this that had just happened. I had to heal the way that I was thinking about it, how I was reacting to it, basically what I was blaming. I had to heal all of it. And that did not happen overnight. I still, to this day, have moments where I break down. And then I just let it, I allow myself to feel it, and I move on. And I acknowledge it, and I show it light and love. I don't ever think that there will be a day that when I think about this, or, something like, when I do get reminded of it, I don't get as emotional as I used to, but I still get upset, and I acknowledge that, and that is okay. If you've gone through trauma, I don't really think you ever fully get over the trauma. I think that it just becomes less painful, and you become more aware of your thoughts around it and your feelings around it, and you are able to look at it in a different perspective and light and understanding than what you had before. And I really think that's where we grow emotionally, and as humans as well, our emotional intelligence and our wisdom in life. It gave me a whole new perspective on the relationship I have with myself and with seeing myself as a mom. I never, you know, even though I'm not a mom, I never had the reality shock of, you know, potentially being one. It really truly made me think hard about, was I ready for this? You know, so many things that came from this situation that now I can look back and be like, that was a blessing. Not to say that I'm glad that I lost it at all. I'm saying that is where I would have looked back before and really resented the experience and really would have shut it down. I would have, the old me would have buried it pretty much. I would not speak about it. I would have not even acknowledged that it existed, because I would be so upset and mad and ashamed at what had happened, rather than now I look at it and I actually see how it grew me as a person and who it has made me to be today, and how it's just prepared me for the next time around, now that I'm going to choose when this happens and take the responsibility rather than leave it to chance, you know. So there was a lot of things that I learned about myself, and things that I obviously learned that I need to work on. One of them being, it showed me in a huge light of how much control that I have to have over my body that I did not realize that I needed to have until I lost the control. That was new to me. So it's being okay with trusting, letting go, you know, understanding that everything happens for a reason, and just flowing with life, not trying to control everything in life. And I know if it's meant to happen, I'll get a rainbow one day. But I'm not concerned either, because I know whatever's gonna happen is gonna happen, and it was meant to. I'm not going to get upset at any outcome if I ever struggle to get pregnant, because there is always that fear. I know that whatever happens moving forward, it was meant to happen, and I am always on the right path, whether I do have a kid one day or not, you know. If I was meant to be a mom, or if I was just meant to help others, you know, or do both. I really hope this videos, if you haven't watched my first one, please do. This one will make so much more sense. I hope these videos help somebody, especially, I know that this is a really rough time. If you have gone through this, if you are currently going through something like this, or it doesn't even have to be a miscarriage, it can be any kind of trauma, you have got to take time to yourself and go in, show yourself the love that you would show somebody else going through a similar situation. Do not bury it. Do not ignore it. Don't act like it never happened. That's when the shit storm will occur. You have to show it light and love and understand it all happens for your greatest good, even if in the moment it just doesn't feel like. Anyways, guys, I think that's all I really had on this stories. I don't know what you want to call it, but I just want to end on a very positive note, that for anybody going through this, You're not alone. And you deserve to be loved. You deserve to be seen and to be heard, to have your feelings validated. You deserve happiness. You deserve healing. You are worthy of all of those things. I'm sending all of you my light and my love. We'll see you guys.